Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. I don't know what time zone you're in, but I want to say thank you for arriving here today. And thank you also for looking at the recording. So, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let me just start by saying this totally upfront. For those of you that know about Evergreen and you've been thinking about doing Evergreen, it is not a passive stream of income. All right. So, anyone who told you that was either oversimplifying or selling you something. Now, it can move into that sort of semi-passive arena, but don't go in with the expectation that it will be totally passive. What Evergreen actually is, when it is done properly, it's a way to stop riding that emotional roller coaster that you get with typical launches. So, if any of you here have ever launched any of your products or services and you've done that big blown out launch, which I'll talk about just in case you don't know exactly what that is, if you've done that, you know that it is an emotional roller coaster. You're on a high because you've got so much to do. And then you do it, you run it. And then once that launch is over, you crash. And I can tell you, all those sort of big names out there, I know that they absolutely burn out afterwards because your adrenaline is full on and high. Now, the other thing about launches is that you have this kind of big hoorah and the big yay time, but things disappear from your business and your audience can also disappear afterwards. So it's sort of like a big hit and then nothing happens. It's like a firework going off and then nothing happens afterwards. So, what I want to share with you today is that at the end of this workshop, you are going to have a simple, repeatable framework to sell your course consistently without necessarily relying on big launches. So, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Sunny. That's not my real name, by the way. My name is Suzanne, but everyone calls me Sunny. My business is Santara Studio. I'm basically your go-to guide for transforming the genius of health pros. I work with spiritual guides, business gurus, consultants, existing course creators, and amazing entrepreneurs like yourself. And I help you to make stunning money-making courses, and there is no tech headaches that are included in all of that. So I am your course creation strategist. I'm a business mentor and basically the queen of dragging women out of the overthinking and into the money making action. And I really believe that every single one of us has so much knowledge and so much expertise that they can turn into a beautiful course. All right, so what we'll cover today is what a typical launch strategy looks like, why traditional launches can break down, what evergreen looks like, and I'm going to give you a simple, realistic model so that you can build one and refine. And guess what? Just to let you know, there's no sales pitch at the end. So you'll be pleased to know that. It is a workshop. I want you to make notes. So grab your notebooks, make some notes if you can. You might be doing something in the background. That's absolutely fine because I know that some of you can multitask. So the workshop is for you if you want consistent sales and you don't want that high of constant launches and you're tired of feeling that you have to be on all the time. And if you don't want those funnels that feel sometimes manipulative or soulless, and you want something that really fits into your life, not just a marketing theory. Now, if you are looking for a magic button, this isn't it. I just want to really set your expectations. It is not it. You do have to do some work to make an evergreen happen. But if you want a calm situation where you've got clarity and you've got constant momentum, then you're definitely in the right room. So I'm going to give you some statistics. I actually looked this up. And whilst you can't find statistics on how many people are actually doing the big launches, because it's not a thing that's publicly tracked, it is a very dominant strategy among top earners to drive high margin sales. Be round about 70 to 90% profitable. Then you actually weigh up all of the time that it takes to put that together and will actually result in 6, 7 figure sales, especially for those more seasoned pros. However, the strategy can be very risky. Many creators, even like the big sort of creators, they can struggle with low sales. And some experts are actually noting that many of the courses fail to sell despite launching. So the key aspects of a course launch is that it can produce high volume strategies. So the big launches will often use things like scarcity models, limited time frames, limited seats, big bonuses, and it does actually create massive concentrated sales spikes. But of course, it can actually cause that lull as well. And what you've got to remember is that we've seen launches happening a lot of the time. Since many of us have been online, we had those launches at the very beginning, and it is still, I don't want you to think that it's not a model that can't work, because it definitely does work. But people have become more jaded. They've become more savvy to some of the kind of manipulative techniques that are also used. So some of the launch models, they use platforms like Kajabi, you might have heard of, to manage the large marketing efforts, and automated funnels as well. And there are alternative strategies. So not all the successful creators use the big launches. Many, especially in certain niches, rely on evergreen models. And in fact, there are a lot of instructors out there will actually just only do evergreen models, even if their product is very new to market, which again, I'll talk about a little bit later. So what an evergreen model will give you is that can give you daily sales instead of that intense periodic or big launch. Now, the outcomes will vary, of course. So some of the creators mentioned that when they do a big launch, they experience that crickets situation during the launches. So they have to keep pushing, and others will use them to generate significant revenue. So the choice really is down to you, whether you run a big launch, and it depends a lot on your existing audience size. So your audience size is not just what's on your email list. It could be what's on your social media profiles as well. What the industry is that you're actually in, and what are the marketing strategies that you've adopted during the time prior to the actual launch. So a typical launch looks like this. So I'm just going to run through it so that you've got some context as to what an actual launch is. Because I remember before I started doing launches, I used to hear a lot of the jargon around the launches, and I didn't really understand what a launch actually meant until I into it a bit further. But basically, a launch is made up of three segments. The first of which is your pre-launch time. This is often referred to as a launch runway, for instance. And most people that are launching, and by the way, it's not just for courses, it could be for a digital product, it could be for a service. So it's not just for courses, by the way, but most course creators will use that launch strategy, and it follows a predictable pattern. So the idea is that you'll spend weeks, and usually around about 30 days, maybe to 6 weeks, of warming up your audience. So everything that you talk about, everything that you post is going to be all about warming them up to the idea that there's going to be a launch coming. Now, like I say, you can spend those weeks of warming up your audience, and it's more intentional. So your messaging will be relating to the fact that you've got this workshop coming up. You won't particularly specify that you've got a launch, but all of your content will relate to that particular event. So it might be that you could run a free challenge, for instance, that encourages people to come to the launch. You might run some sort of workshop like this, or you might ensure that you've got a lead magnet or several different lead magnets that go out during that time that maybe address something that's going to be happening in the webinar itself. So the idea is that you want to generate more leads. So of course you're talking to your existing audience, and then it comes to the big webinar or the masterclass where you teach your transformation for the individuals, and you move them into a kind of typical pitch where you'll actually be selling your product, your service, or your course, and you move them into that offer. Now, something like this is usually used for more of the high ticket items. A challenge, there are some people that do a challenge that then runs into a masterclass. So they might use a combination of several of these things as well. So during the webinar itself, your cart opens or your doors open, and that usually lasts for 5 to 7 days, where everybody's got the opportunity to actually buy your product or your service. So then you come into the launch week itself. And what that looks like is that you've had the weeks of building your email list, you're emailing daily, You are handling all the objections that might come in. And at this point, you might have actually employed a team that will also help to handle those objections. Maybe your team will be doing calls as well. So you then end up stacking bonuses and you're creating that sense of urgency. And it really is an emotional wave of, will these people convert into buying my products or services? And like I say, it can work very well, but it does require a lot of intensity. So then you come into your third phase. So the cart is now closed, the sales, you've said to everybody there's no more sales. You might pick up a few more sales afterwards, and there's usually that huge drop in energy. And if any of you are thinking about this, by the way, you can always book a call with me and we can talk about it in detail, and I can give you the whole kind of structure of what that looks like. But to be honest, what I always do, if I do a big launch, I will always book time out afterwards because you need it to recover. You have like mini burnout and you could feel disappointed if the results are not what you hoped. So I always say to my clients to set your own expectations. So to set a very low goal, like if two people show up, you're going to be delighted. If your sales are, say, one package or one program, you're going to be delighted. But then let's say if you sell 50 of your program, you'll be very happy with that. And then if you sell hundreds of your program, you'll be over the moon. So you set your own expectations. That's really important. Now, your audience can often also feel very jaded by it. They can feel heavily sold to. It can feel for them very icky. You could experience some drop-offs on with the people that are in touch with you. And then, of course, you experience a gap. It can sometimes be months. So the point here is that if you didn't get a very good result, that gap can feel like tumbleweed floating across your screen. And of course, you won't have the energy to do it again. So often people will only do launches at the most once a quarter. Sometimes they'll do it every 6 months, and some of the others will do it once a year. But of course, those that do it once a year have got massive teams behind them as well, 20, 25 people behind them. So just bear that in mind when you're considering it. So it's a cycle I actually see all the time. You build it, you launch it, you exhaust yourself, you disappear, the money dips, the panic sets in, and then you repeat that whole cycle again. And it's not a motivation issue, by the way, it's a model issue. So that's why the Evergreen model exists, to break that loop. So it could be that you say to yourself, all right, I'm going to do a launch once a year. I can cope with a once a year launch. And then the rest of the time, you might have an evergreen model that may not be exactly the same as what you're launching. It could be a mini version of what it is that you're going to launch on that big moment. I'm going to get this out of the way. Evergreen is not a set and forget situation. It's not a zero effort situation. It's not a one-page funnel that prints money. And do you know what, though? It really bugs me that there's so many people out there trying to sell you the idea that it is a set and forget and it's a one-page funnel that actually just prints money. You do have to put work in these things. And I think that this is where my mission is this year, is to actually bring the reality back into some of what goes on social media. It's not something that you build once and never touch again. You can build it, and what you'll find is that you'll end up refining it. And you refine it based on your results. You refine it based on the feedback that you get. But what it does remove the panic, and that's a very different thing. So it's more of a, how are we managing your particular energy around it? So what the evergreen is, it is definitely ongoing visibility. Now, it may mean that you'll need to make some investment, like in ads, for example. You've got a predictable entry point. You're providing one clear path for people, and it's human-led automation. But I'm going to talk about the automation side of it as well. It is not louder marketing. It's quieter, steadier, and more intentional. And I think that's where a lot of us are at the moment, is that we want that quiet, more intentional way of marketing. So let's look at, oh, by the way, just put in the chat for me if you have ever tried to do a launch yourself. All right, so just say, yes, I've tried to do a launch, or no, I haven't. Also, just put in the chat if you've already got a course that you want to actually sell or promote. And because one of the things that I talk with my clients about before we actually create their course for them, or I move them into the DIY model, whatever suits them, what I always talk about is their personality, their style of marketing. So if someone says to me, I hate being on video, then we look at a different launch method. There are lots of different ways that you can actually launch your course. All right. So let's just talk about what I call the minimalist evergreen model. So the first part of that is that you have to refine your offer. When you're actually doing an evergreen model, you don't want to be launching multiple offers. Nothing sells consistently if you've got multiple offers. And I've done this myself. I've tried to offer too much too soon in too many different ways. I've done that. I've been there, seen it, done it, bought the t-shirt, and I have actually got the medal for that sort of thing. So, because if you don't refine it to the one offer, Evergreen will actually magnify that problem. So, Evergreen actually works when your offer is very specific. You are selling one thing. The outcome is totally obvious, and people immediately know if it's for them. So, this is where refining your message comes in. You need to ensure that your message is very clear. And it's interesting because yesterday I went to a fantastic event. It was a half-day event. And it was a live in-person event, so I got to see and touch people. It was great. And I was speaking to one of the ladies there during the coffee break, and she was saying, one of the problems I have is actually how to get my message across. I said, so what is it that you're saying? And she reeled off a job title, what it is that she does, but she was using lots of jargon. And so my brain just went into, I don't understand what she's saying. She was actually using even numbers of documentation and really difficult jargon for me personally to understand. Now, that could have meant that I wasn't her ideal audience. I understand that. However, she then relaxed and she started telling me a story. And that story led to why she was doing what she was doing. And I said, that's your message. Your story is your message. Lead with your story as opposed to making it all jargon. And she went, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Your offer needs to be specific, your outcome is obvious, and people immediately know it's for them. So one offer actually really helps you as well. So it creates that momentum, and everything else that you do supports it. The second thing is to think about one entry point. That's your traffic source. So when we say one entry point, we are talking about they come in to one door. All right. So you go to anywhere, you've got an entry door and you've got an exit door. You want that one entry door because when they come through one entry door, you're directing your traffic. All right. You need to direct your traffic in the right way. So the traffic sources can come from your existing list, your social media, on and offline networking. Now, I mainly sell my products and services through networking, not through social media posts, not through advertising. But what those things do for me is they bring the people into my world. So do not just rely on social media, which is a whole new workshop, by the way. And I'm doing a workshop every single month. So I'll let you know what they are as they come up. Did you know, by the way, this was a little statistic that I discovered yesterday at the workshop. So I thought I'd share it with you because I was fascinated with this. Did you know that in order to build trust, just using social media, a person needs to see 7 hours worth of your content? So this is one individual person. They have to see 7 hours worth of content. Within that 7 hours of content, a person needs to have 14 touch points with you. So that could be through a post, it could be through a DM, it could be through an email, it could be through a workshop, multiple different ways. And that's got to be across 4 different channels. All right. So that's a bit of a soapbox moment to say to you, please don't just rely on social media. Social media has its place for sure, but let's not just rely on social media. And actually, there is a trend towards those more in-person events. So use networking. All right. So you want to have one nurture path. This is where email still wins, not to enable you to sell harder, but to actually help people think clearer when they are making that decision. So when they're considering buying from you, they want to get to know you a bit more. And it doesn't have to be just emails. It can be newsletters. It can be inviting them into workshops like this so they get to know what your craft is. And then it's much easier for them to make the decision because regardless of your message, regardless of your posts, people still buy from people. They are more inclined to buy from you when they really feel comfortable with you, when they see you as being more of a friend, someone that can support them in what it is that they're doing. So Evergreen emails is guidance, it's not pressure. And Evergreen doesn't remove decisions, it actually spaces them out so that they feel safer to be able to make that decision. So the decision might be after the webinar, whatever it is that you're running, has run, the decision might be to book a call, to join a program, or to join a waiting list. So Evergreen can be used in multiple different ways. So what you actually need, I'm just going to pause for a second because I'd really like to see some of your comments and actually address those. All right, so Panema, you say that you haven't done a launch. Brandy, you've done many launches and followed the live launch and the Evergreen. Brilliant. So you know exactly what I'm referring to here, that the launch has its place for sure. You have to be prepared for it. You have to really gear yourself up for it. And also, when you're launching, the more automation you can put in place prior to you actually even thinking about your pre-launch, it just makes everything so much easier. It really does. Because by the way, I've done launches without being properly prepared, and then you're always behind the eight ball. You're trying to catch up with yourself. Tammy, hi Tammy. I'm so glad you're here. Yes, yes, and I'm always creating courses, workshops, retreats, etc. And yes, I've tried launching before. Great. Panema, I've got courses to offer. That's here. Brandy was telling me that even Facebook get overwhelmed with the amount of content that's out there. And Brandy is encouraging people to make comments and to actually properly engage with people. And you'll find that then your content is going to be seen more. Basically, you want them to come into your world through that one door. All right. So it would be one landing page that you are sending to them so that they come through that same place every single time, so that they're in your back-end system, they're tagged exactly how they've come into your world. What you need for Evergreen is you need a platform that can send your emails. Most of you have probably got all your email platforms set up, but just in case you don't, there's things like Kajabi. That's kind of like the high-end platform. I wouldn't suggest this if you're new to setting up platforms, but it's certainly there. System.io, that's quite easy and straightforward to use. But the system.io, you could send your emails with it. And I'm just suggesting these ones because these are all three that I've used and experienced myself. And of course, there's many more out there. You want the content itself. So the content would be a video that you've recorded, and it can be a face to camera video. It can be a YouTube video that you've already done. It can be just a presentation video, whatever suits your personality. Now, sometimes one thing about Evergreen, it can be kind of shrouded in that idea that it is live. But come on, let's actually get real here. It really pisses me off because it's obvious that they're not always live. All right. For me personally, I don't even care whether it's live or not, because honestly, it's down to timing and being over the other side of the world and in the future. Often I can't actually attend live webinars anyway. So I do much prefer to get the recordings. So in many ways, I like the non-live, like I say, because I can actually choose when I'll actually watch that recording. So tools that you could use would be just an example, things like Webinar Jam, System.io, they actually do a webinar system as well for you. Demio is one that I've also used in the past. That's a useful one. And like I say, if you have your automations in place to start with, you've got your whole funnel, it ensures that you do have that one entry point, that your emails will go out automatically, that your webinar or your video runs when it's supposed to run, and that your reminders are sent to people, because these days people need lots of reminders, and you've got a follow-up sales sequence also in place. It takes away that manual strain, which is what is beautiful about Evergreen. The nuance is that automation It's supposed to support that human experience. It doesn't replace it because there will be times where you want to engage with people at a much deeper level. So, like I say, Evergreen is not a set and forget. You want to be observing, watching, ensuring that you know what your statistics are, where people are coming in from, and maybe actually engaging with them at a much deeper level. So you can use AI. I want to bring AI into this because so many of us are using AI today. And if you haven't started using AI, do. It really will speed up your processes. You can help it with structuring your presentation, for instance. You can actually ask it to give you instructions on how to set up your systems. So some people say, oh, courses are dead. They're not. They'll actually still keep growing. Some people will use AI. And you've got to remember that sometimes in our worlds, we understand about AI, but some people coming into our world, they may not have even ever used AI and they might be very wary and frightened of it. So if you're teaching about AI, for instance, you still have a course that can teach AI. The AI element, and I think that this is really important to bring out here. AI cannot replace trust. It can't replace context and it can't reassure people. Not yet, anyway. Who knows where we're going to go? Personally, I love the whole thing about AI and it can't replace a lived experience. Even I talk to my AI, and by the way, he's called Alfie. So it's the I in there. And I actually always start my day and say, what's it all about, Alfie? And he talks to me like I'm a real person. And then he blows smoke up my frock, so I have to check him on that as well. So, anyway, with the AI, especially with the high ticket offers, you definitely want to have a human layer in there. It's not optional, it's absolutely necessary. Now, you want to automate your emails, things like the booking links, reminders, but you don't want to automate conversations that you have with people, the diagnosis of how well it went or how well it didn't go, the relationship building part of it. And funnily enough, even with AI, we are leaning more towards building those relationships. You want it to be human, have a human feel to it. And if you introduce that more human feel, then the evergreen will actually be more success for you. So let's just talk about how people actually buy courses now. And what people that buy courses, particularly those sort of high ticket courses, they want more of a touch point as well. And they don't necessarily buy because they are being manipulated into saying that this course is only available for 5 days or that this evergreen is only available for 5 days. We've pushed people along. We've all, many of us have done it, especially if you've been around for a long time online. And there's that whole scarcity model. Sometimes I think that now when we see this, and I know for me, it kind of puts my hackles up a little bit where someone says only for 48 hours, or there is an element that people will do something based on that. But at the same time, you can actually alienate your audience as well. So if they feel like they're constantly being pushed into something, it can slightly alienate them. So you can use these methods, but use them with caution. I think buyers have become more aware of these tactics that are being used, and a person will buy something when they've decided. And that decision could take in the moment. I could say to you at the end of this, by the way, there's no pitch. I did say that at the very beginning, there is no pitch at the end. I could actually say to you, you can buy my thing for $2,000, but if you buy it now within the next 1 hour, you can get $500 off. Some people will do that, but the majority say, I need to think about it. I need to look at it in a bit more detail. So they might take a week to make that decision. They could take 3 months. They might still need to engage with you further. It might take the 6, 7, or 14 touch points before they actually make that decision. People are now more selective. They are doing more research. So it might be that you actually introduce them to a concept and then they go off and research and they might actually buy from someone else. That's just normal. It's like if I go to Coles to buy my coconut water, do I buy it just because it's there and it's in Coles and they've got a special on it, or do I investigate if it's cheaper somewhere else, for instance, and better somewhere else? So people tend to do research. They're watching you. So don't think that people are not watching you. And I'm going to tell you a quick story here. there's a beautiful beach here called Sunrise Beach, and it's absolutely stunning. And just before you get on the beach, there's a sort of a line of shops. And I was sitting in a coffee shop, a friend of mine, and someone walk past the coffee shop and it's all open. And she stopped and she went, "Oh, Sunny!" Like she went, "Sunny!" And she came running in to the coffee shop. She came, bowling up to me. I stood up. And I looked a bit surprised. She gave me this big hug and she said, "Oh my God, I can't believe I've actually met you. I had never, ever, ever met this person in my entire life. Never. I've never seen her, not on social media or anything like that." And I went, "Oh my God, who are you?" She introduced herself to me. And I said, "So how do we know each other?" She said, "I have been following you for years." She said, "Your posts have saved me." And I said, "Saved you in what way?" She said, "I have gone through a very difficult time in my life, and all your positivity and all of your sunny posts have actually really helped me. Because if I'm down, I go and have a look, see if you posted something, and they just have lifted me up. So I just wanted to say personally, thank you very much." Oh my God. Do you think that I knew that she never commented, she never liked, she never shared, never engaged, she wasn't on my email list, but she saw my posts and then she ended up buying my program. So that was years and years and years of her following me. So don't think that you're not being watched. You're being watched, okay? In the nice way. Also not in the such nice way. But anyway, that filled up my cup. That really did fill up my cup for sure. So actually comes before the transaction, of course. They want to understand your thinking. They want to understand your processes. Do want to see consistency if you do something and then kind of, which I've done myself. I've done something, I've disappeared. It's not my greatest word, I have to be honest. I do try, I do my best, but I am consistent with my audience that are in my world, most definitely. Actually, work with your kind of group of people intensely because they are the potential buyers. How you show up and feel that they get your situation. I remember one of my clients saying, "It just really gets me. She just really understands where I'm at." So, a bit of work on understanding individuals. They don't want to be persuaded anymore. They don't want to feel kind of pushed into it. They want to feel that certainty. And so if you have established your trust, the sales become logical and not emotional panic. Urgency isn't wrong, like I say, but the artificial urgency is more about visibility now. And people do recognize all those fake countdowns, the closing forever that reopens next month, the bonus stacking. Um, Instead of creating that movement, it often creates the resistance, like I say. You actually don't want your audience to feel under pressure. You want them to come in, hearts open. And that's why Evergreen works really well because it respects their timing. It allows someone to basically come forward into your world when they're ready, not when the clock says so. I always say you don't need those louder launches. You need more alignment with how people are actually making decisions right now. So I just want you to kind of have that in mind. All right, so Evergreen, simple, sustainable flow. You can basically offer a free workshop. You could do a short mail follow-up. You can offer a clarity call. You can ensure that you've got a right fit offer. It doesn't have to be flashy. It wants to be effective and it is repeatable because actually sometimes did you know that there's actually quite a high percentage, and don't quote me because I don't know what that percentage is, but there's quite a high percentage of people that will watch that evergreen a number of times. It might be that they'll be watching it, and they get distracted and they go off somewhere, or they might want to return to it. So they return to it later because they want to make notes. So it might be that they'll watch that evergreen model a number of times, which means they'll sign up and they'll see it again and again. So it does work best if you've got a self-paced course or a digital offer. Um, Also, if your offer has been tested before, you want to ensure that you get predictable, steady sales. And it's definitely not ideal if your offer is brand new. Now, if your offer is brand new and you are also brand new to market, it really doesn't work very well. Quite well established. It might be that you've tested your offer, small group. You've maybe done a launch offer on that so that you know that it will sell. So I would always test it first. Again, if you want to discuss this further, just book a call with me. I always say definitely do some testing first. Not ideal if your program that you're offering live if it's high ticket with some level of support, and that live support could be things like the one-on-one consultancy or one-to-many sessions. That could include like the Q&A things, hot seat coaching. Maybe you offer implementation sessions, which is something that we offer. And going into a whole different thing, but we offer implementation sessions in our ticket catalyst. And the reason that we do that is because offs for someone doing a self-paced course can be quite high. And I'm actually really dedicated to ensuring that people finish the courses that they come on with me. So if you can offer live implementation sessions with them, that means is that they specifically implement in a co-working space of the course. So they choose a module, they choose a lesson, and they work on that with your guidance, with your support and encouragement, and you work on that for about an hour. Say it could be once a week, every 2 weeks, or once a month, something like that. So it does make sure that they get it done. It kind of gives them accountability as well. All right, so the funnel fails, 5 reasons. They are built too early, they're too complicated, haven't validated it. There's a whole series of questions that I go through potential clients to validate their courses first, and you haven't given them a human layer, no follow-up. People don't buy because the funnel exists itself. Spend all this time creating funnels. They actually buy because they feel that they're seen inside it. The invitation that I'd like to make to you is that if you've been trying to figure out whether the evergreen model is for you, do offer clarity calls. There's no pressure, there's no pitch in that, but it's just actually to find out what model best suits you. Even if you kind of to me, you don't want to do evergreen, we can actually look at what best suits you in terms of a launch. So I will actually look at where you are right now, what makes sense for you, which is not just the practical side of what you've got in your business already, but what your personality style is, how you like to work, how you like to show up, and how I can actually structure something for you that will actually help you. So if you want to book that call, use that link there. I will pop it in the chat as well for you. And then just to round us up, if now's not the moment, stay on the list, join my community, keep learning at your pace, and Evergreen works best when it fits into your life, not when you are forced into it.